Hello, everyone. This is Talita from EpiMom Talita and her2encourage.com. And I'm coming to you today because, as you know, it is a National Epilepsy Awareness Month. And I'm excited about having a month of awareness for this particular diagnosis because it hits close to home. So my son is 3 years old and one of his underlying diagnoses is epilepsy. So the first thing you probably want to know is, if you haven't heard a lot about it, or maybe you've just seen it on TV, well, what is epilepsy anyway? So epilepsy is when you have 2 or more unprovoked seizures. Okay. And for many people, like there might be children who sometimes they get sick and they have a fever that spikes 103, 104 or higher, and it trips them into a seizure, or they have underlying medical conditions and they have an isolated event. That's a little different. But epilepsy is when a child continues to have seizures that were not really brought on by any illness or anything like that. They're just unprovoked seizures that happen for, we don't really know why. Now, when you have epilepsy, it's usually diagnosed when you take what's called an EEG. So an EEG is an electroencephalogram, but you can't say that 3 times fast. Electroencephalogram. They use this particular test to measure the brain waves, and they look at, I guess, variations in between those to decide if a child is in fact having seizures, or, if there are any other issues that may be going on. So now that you know what they are, how they're diagnosed, the next thing you probably want to know is, well, how does it affect you as a person? So with my son, his seizures went undetected, if that makes sense. Because when I thought of seizures, I always thought of grandma. Those are the ones you see where people fall out on the floor and they're shaking. And, people always say, make sure they're on their side so they don't swallow their tongue. I don't even know if that has any scientific bearing, but maybe so. But either way, those were the seizures. When I thought of seizures, that's what came to mind. But with my son, they looked a little different. So I wanted to share with you exactly what those seizures look like when they're in action. And I have 2 different kinds that I want to show you. So on to the video. Now, if you're easily disturbed, this may be something you want to skip past, but honestly, it's our reality. And I feel like if you know someone that has struggled with or suffers with epilepsy, it gives you a bigger insight as to what they're dealing with. And I think that just makes us more kind individuals in general. So check this first one out.
Maybe one of the workers was having fun, but I
80.
don't think it was Jack. No one was hurt. Don't you think you're overreacting?
I'm in charge,
80.
and he's grumbling.
I need my stuff.
No, what you need to do
pupils.
is start thinking
80.
about an apology for me and your sister.
Jack?
80. 80. 80. Ooh, baby. You okay? You okay? Grandmommy's singing or something. You okay? All right, so you see in that first video, when you watched my son, he just sat there and he looked zoned out. That's the best way I can say it. So I called his name. I shook him just to see if he would change positions. If you noticed, he didn't move until his brain, I always think about it like the brain having the child almost in a chokehold. And it's like when it comes to seizures, they stop happening when the brain just releases it and says, okay, I'm done. But there's nothing you can really do in between, unless they're, of course, medicated, or if they're having really bad episodes, you can take it to the hospital and they have certain treatments for it. But if you're just a regular parent, there's really not a ton that you can do when they're having those seizures. Now, the next video that you're going to see is of my son when he had what I call cluster seizures, because he would have them back to back to back to back to back. So you're going to see an example of his arm stiffening, his head dropping, and he always made this noise that came with it. So I want you to take a look at that one for a second. Here we go.
Choose from a selection of free phones valued up to $399. Metro PCS.
Oh my
We
God.
cannot handle one more lawsuit.
Fox Monday. Secrets will be discovered. If we take her on and lose her, careers will be over. Frauds will be exposed.
I have installed recording devices in every alarm.
And one of these people
What else wrong?
full price.
Are you sure?
The Resident. All new Monday on Fox. If
I
it's
hope that is right.
All right, so now that you have seen that video, it probably was a little bit disturbing to most of you, but that is honestly, or was honestly, our reality before we realized that he would need a regular regimen for medication to kind of help control those seizures. So now that I've shown you exactly what seizures are, how they can be caught or diagnosed, and what they look like, the next thing is, what do you do now? If I have any tips about seizures, number one, it's when you get used to them, because when they first start happening, you won't do this. Record it. As much as you want to help your kid, it's crazy to say the recordings help the most, because if you can show the doctor that what you're saying is actually happening, it helps your kid's case so much better. Because you can be the most elaborate, eloquent person ever, but if they don't see it with their eyes, I think it's just harder for them to make, to make a proper judgment and a proper diagnosis without going through the EEG or the MRI process. So definitely do that. The second thing I would suggest is, if there's something in your gut that doesn't feel right, in terms of if you're not sure your kid is having a seizure or not, and your primary pediatrician does not agree with you, you probably should get a neurologist. Just try to see if your pediatrician will refer you to a neurologist, just to double check. And honestly, if your primary pediatrician will not, you probably need to find another pediatrician. Just throwing that out there. Because in my case, I felt like something was wrong when he was younger, and he wouldn't focus. He would look like through you. And the only way you will understand that is if you actually have a child do it. And he wasn't reaching his milestones, and something just seemed really off. Primary pediatrician thought it was like constipation, and I thought, so no, something else is going on. And sure enough, I had to get him to refer me to a neurologist, and it turns out my kid was having seizures. And it shocked me, because I had only considered grand mal seizures. Those were the only ones I was familiar with, or I had seen. I did not know a kid could have a seizure and just be dazed, and their pupils just dilate, and you try to talk to them and nothing, until their brain's ready to stop. Or I didn't realize that a kid could literally have a seizure where they have those jerks in motion, but it's not a constant jerk. It's just a jerk and hold, and they're frozen like they're full of cement, and there's nothing that you can do until their brain stops. Had no idea. So if you feel like your kid's having a seizure, see if you can get a referral to the neurologist. Now, if you're already on a regimen, and because I'm making this video, I thought about this today, and if your kid is known to have epilepsy, then they may have something called, the doctors call it diastat. I think mine is called diazepam or something like that. So mine is diazepam, and I'm going to hold it up so you can see it. Like every special needs mom, kid, person probably has this thing right here. What is this? Well, this is for kids like mine, and probably other kids who have uncontrollable seizures. If they have them they tell you if it's anything longer than 5 minutes, you can give this to them. So this goes up their rectum, and you insert it, and it's supposed to stop the seizure. I have never, thank God, had to use this one. I just always take them to the hospital. But if you have one of these, check the expiration date. And make sure you check the back of this. I'm sure EpiPens are probably very similar, but there's an expiration date. And if you can see, his is not until 2022. So if you have one of these in your bag and you've had it for a while, please make sure that you go today, like right now, and go check to make sure it is still some good. So that way, you don't run into an issue where your kid has seizures and you're kind of stuck without anything to help you out. So I hope that this helps some as far as what seizures are, how they're diagnosed, some tips for you if you have a kid that has epilepsy. But Also, I wanted to throw this out here. I do have a blog at epi-mom. So that's epi-mom.com. So on that blog, I do have a lot of posts about epilepsy in detail, my child's story in detail, just some tips that may help you just in general. In addition to if you have a medically fragile or a special needs child, there's a ton of stuff there for that. Also, if you're interested in showing your awareness, I do have some apparel, so some epilepsy shirts. I'll drop the links for those if you're interested. But the biggest thing I want you to do now, though, is if you're watching this via YouTube, please go and drop your story in the comments of the YouTube video, because if people actually drift here, even if it's one mom, just one, and she's struggling and she'll have a clue what's going on, and she doesn't have a clue if maybe her kid is having a seizure or not. I want her to watch this video and go, oh my gosh, this is what my kid has. She may be able to show it to the doctor. That may help. She may show it to her any other healthcare professionals or her family members, just to get some more insight. So if you have even had a kid that had one seizure, don't feel like that is less than somebody who has a kid who has epilepsy, who has seizures all the time. Because even if your kid had one seizure, there are parents that don't know what to do with that. They're like, okay, is this going to happen forever? Did this just happen because of the illness? What the heck? Drop your story below. It can be just a quick summary of what happened with your kid, what the outcome was, and where to get help. That way we can build a community of people, of moms, of dads, of grandmas, of aunties, uncles, all types of people who can come here and get some feedback so that they can get the best help for their child. So I'm glad you guys spent some time with me today. I'm so thankful that all of you are here and watch this. I hope this was beneficial in some way. And I hope that as you go forth in your weekend, even though it's kind of rainy and overcast where I am, you go forth in strength and dignity. Bye-bye.